Well, the highly anticipated UFC 205 Fight Week is officially underway here in New York City, and there's starting to feel like a buzz is building right outside of Madison Square Garden. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani, of course, standing outside the Mecca alongside our own Chuck Mindenhall. That is New York's own Marc Raimondi. And Chuck, let me start with you. Around a month and a half or so ago, we stood in almost this exact same spot following that UFC 205 press conference. Now that the first day of the media week is officially in the books, we had the open workouts, and we also had the ultimate media day, if you will, with the rest of the card. Does it feel like this is actually happening, or does this kind of feel like one of those New Jersey events where in the past they've done all the media stuff here before?
Well, the second part of the Ultimate Media Day was in the exact room, I think, that we went in. So that part felt similar, I guess, because of that. But when we're sitting in the actual Madison Square Garden and you're looking at the Knicks hardwood, and you're seeing Conor McGregor out there, where it kind of hits you, especially when you just kind of look up in the Jumbotron and the ceiling and everything, and all the hallmarks of Madison Square Garden. Yeah, I definitely had a moment where I was like, wow, we're here. We finally are at this moment where they're going to do this. It always sort of felt like we were just kind of, parading in New York before, because you just come here and it was just like to kind of dangle it in front of them, and you knew it wasn't going to be here. But I had a moment today where I was definitely like, wow, we're finally going to do this thing right here in New York City.
Yeah, so very cool that they left the Knicks court out there, and of course leave it to Conor McGregor to take advantage of that situation and nail a jumper on his first and only shot. I mean, the guy has a flair for the dramatic. What was your big takeaway from the open workouts? And in the open workouts, we saw the three champions, the three title contenders. We saw them all go up and sort of work out and speak to the fans and media assembled. What was your biggest takeaway?
Definitely how loose Conor McGregor was. I thought he was incredibly loose, and I was a little surprised he made his first shot. There were no takes, ladies and gentlemen. It was actually the first try.
I love how this is such a big news story.
Yeah, top of the key. Look, it wasn't the most graceful-looking jump shot I've ever seen. Although maybe the Knicks could, use a little bit of that.
Don't go there, my man. Don't go there.
He made it in. That's all that's important. The results were there, and that is McGregor. And I thought he was, the first thing he did was he ran into the stands, and, he was really loose, more loose than we've seen him, certainly for featherweight fights, because the weight cut is so oppressive for him. I think that's a big deal. I thought Eddie Alvarez looked fantastic. I thought he looked like he was absolutely ripped. He looked probably the best I've seen him in an open workout, like press conference setting. He just shredded. Thought, the women looked good. Joanna was doing her own Reebok giveaway. I guess she got some extra stuff from Reebok. She was just tossing it into the crowd. I think it was cool. I think every fighter actually really was happy to be at Madison Square Garden and actually got a kick out of being, on the Knicks floor.
Mark, in my opinion, one of the most fascinating storylines going into this card is how is Joanna Jędrzejczyk going to look on Saturday? Because it's very rare to see a champion, no less an undefeated champion, switch camps in the middle of a pretty dominant title run. And here she is, first camp with the American top team. She leaves Poland and somewhat coincidentally is fighting a Polish fighter. So now Karolina Kowalkiewicz is the hometown or home country hero, and Joanna is the one who left Poland to come to the United States. It's an interesting dynamic, but what I'm most interested in is just how she's going to look, how she's going to fight. And I thought, just from what we saw from her, she appeared to be more cut and in better shape than we've ever seen her. And Karolina as well, but Joanna really stood out to me. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that any time you switch camps, that first fight is not really always indicative of how it's going to end up for you. I think we've seen people switch camps in the past, and first fight is not always the best, but I think that she's already fought Karolina. She knows what to expect. I'm sure they've run into each other in Poland. Not that it's a tiny country, but the fight scene there. I think she's going to look good. I think that the strength and conditioning, as you pointed out, could be a big factor at ATT. Some of the guys at ATT look just fantastic. They're probably one of the better conditioned fight camps. I think that's going to go a long way. And also wrestling. I think wrestling and the clinch. If you notice today, Karolina was working the clinch a lot with her coach. That's one of her strengths of her game. It's one of the strengths of Joanna's game too. But I think that her getting bigger, her getting stronger is a big part of winning that fight, because Karolina is excellent in the clinch. That's one of her big strengths.
Yeah. After the open workouts, we had this Ultimate Media Day. The entire rest of the card was there, from the first fight all the way to the fourth fight on the card, because we had the three fights at the open workouts. You talked to a bunch of the fighters. Any interesting takeaways from your conversations?
Not really.
That's it. Okay, we could go home. Good night, everyone.
No, I thought, like, you talked to Chris Weidman as well. I thought he seemed like he was actually soaking in the moment a little bit. At least he did to me. He just seemed like he He'd been wanting to do this for a long time. I talked to Frankie Edgar. He seemed a little bit still peeved by situations going on around him. Maybe he was just in a bad mood, but he wanted on the card, and you could feel that he was, just happy to be in that situation. But I did feel like there's still a huge chip on his shoulder, which is, I love this Frankie Edgar, you know what I mean? That guy who's going to carry that around until he kind of gets the situation righted. But nothing really stood out, honestly. Like, I talked to a lot of the fighters, but some of them are sort of, like Liz Carmouche is on the card, and there's people like that. I think they have some weird ties to being here, but I don't think it's this crazy historic thing for them. It feels more like a fight for most of them. That's how it came across.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that as things stand right now, there's only one New York-born fighter on this card because Rashad Evans was one of two. He was pulled from the card yesterday due to an issue that came up in a pre-fight MRI, and now it's just Chris Weidman, which is very bizarre. You talked to a bunch of the fighters as well. Anything stick out?
No.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
I think Yoel Romero always fascinates me when he talks and also when he fights. They're kind of very similar, enigmatic. You don't really know what you're going to get when you watch a Romero fight or when you talk to him. He gave me some kind of very interesting proverb that's somehow related to him and John Jones testing positive for banned substances.
Can you recite said proverb?
I have to unpack all that stuff and try to figure out exactly what it meant, but it seemed like it was very wise at the time. I think that's a really excellent fight, though, Romero Weidman. I actually had a different experience with Frankie. I thought he was pretty loose. Jeremy Stephens was I thought very focused. He really was not. He did not want to talk about anything else really except for the fight with Frankie Edgar, and he feels like the fight with Edgar is a bigger fight than the Eddie Conor fight because he feels like that. I think he said that he feels like Edgar is the true champion. That was the quote that he gave me. So I thought that was interesting.
Now, Chuck, I would be.
But a lie. No.
That's right. I'd be remiss if I don't at least acknowledge the fact that we are shooting this, less than 24 hours after this historic United States presidential election.
Yeah. Was that last night?
That was actually this morning, to be honest, if we're trying to be accurate here. And while I know people don't want to hear us talk about politics, you did have an opportunity to speak to some of the fighters about what transpired around 12 or so hours ago. Any interesting comments from the fighters here?
I was a little surprised because we're out here in New York, and I mean, riding the train in today was like it was funereal and it's odd. Just everybody very mournful of what was going on with this whole thing. But yet, talking to some of these fighters, now obviously they're coming in from different sectors, but I was surprised at how many of them actually voted for Trump. That was really what stood out to me. It was like there was more defense towards. Kind of sticking up for why they voted for him than I got the other way, which was, I guess I was a little surprised by that. But ultimately, the ones that I thought, I thought Liz Carmouche might have some interesting things to say, and I think she kind of held back a little bit, and I think some of them, they don't want to open that can of worms, for a variety of reasons. But I would say the only thing that really stood out was just the Trump supporters.
Well, they should be proud of the fact that Trump won then, because their boss, Dana White, is a staunch Trump supporter, so maybe they're just sucking up to their boss and actually lying to you about all of that.
Soul is leaving his body right now.
Mark, let's end on this.
About Ari Emanuel, though. His brother Rahm Emanuel is a Democrat, and
fascinating.
His team Hillary. It's very interesting, right? I wonder what those conversations are.
We could do a whole other show just about this dynamic.
No one would watch it.
You'd be surprised. Let's end on this. Yesterday, the news came out that Rashad Evans was pulled from the card because of an issue that came up in an MRI that happened on October 19th. Tim Kennedy not getting an opponent for this card, so he has been pulled as well. Interesting to note, though, that both of the guys got their show money. And in the past, UFC hasn't done this sort of thing, so I think they need to get a lot of credit for that. Now, we're hearing, as of this taping, that the UFC is working towards booking that card for the December 10th show in Toronto, UFC 206. So that's a nice addition for the Toronto fans who thought that card was a little bit lacking. But my question to you is, if an issue came up on October 19th and then Rashad Evans was required to do further testing, I mean, that's almost a month before this. Are you surprised that the UFC didn't at least have a contingency plan in place so that if something did happen, the 11th hour with this commission, who's new to MMA, that they could slide someone in there to fight Tim Kennedy?
You would think so. Do we know if the UFC was privy to that information? Do we know that they were?
According to Rashad Evans, they were.
It's interesting. I think that he did do follow-up tests and he passed all of them. So maybe the UFC was confident that because of that he would get on the card. And this is apparently something that Rashad has had. And it's nothing new. He's fought in other commissions. He's fought with it for a long time, and it's never raised a red flag before. So maybe the UFC felt like, oh yeah, this is not a big deal. We can get it taken care of. That's the only thing I could think of. It. The whole thing raises the interest. I mean, what really intrigues me about the situation is that, you know, this commission is very much unknown to us because it's the first MMA show, and they're unknown to MMA. And they're being sued by the boxer who was left disabled after that 2013 bout, and I've written a lot about this. So maybe they're a little bit more conservative. Maybe they really want to, they're afraid of any kind of red flags, any kind of potential issues with fighters, and it's something to look at for future shows in New York. Like, are there going to be more fighters not allowed, not licensed to fight because of that? And it's possible. You know, you never know.
All right, that does it for day one. Already up on the site, tons of videos, tons of articles, tons of photos. So we've got it covered for you from beginning of the day to end here in New York City. Tomorrow on the docket, it's the MMA beat at a special time. We're starting an hour earlier, so that's 12 p.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific, and I believe 5 p.m. over in the UK. Why? Because the press conference is a little close to our usual 1 p.m. start, so we wanted to have enough time to go over. So again, 12 p.m. Eastern time, live on MMAfighting.com. It's the MMA beat. We'll be going 5 deep on Thursday, so stay tuned for that. Then it's the press conference later on in the day. We'll have coverage of that. We'll be right back here recapping it all, so do not go anywhere. For now, we'll say goodbye from New York City. For Chuck, for Mark, I am Ariel. Go Knicks.